And now I want to talk about a matter that's really underrated in the tech industry, a topic that's dear to me, and it's about the Black community in Silicon Valley. I wanted to have your take on some of the weird and surprising facts. For instance, I did some research and I'll share the info in the show notes. For example, we got only around 1.2% of the total venture capital funding in the US was raised by Black founders in 2022, according to a VC Human Capital survey. In terms of investors at VC firms, we have only 4% of the total numbers of VCs and 5% of employees at many top tech companies. I mean, you've even been asked yourself a question at KubeCon 2017. I record, how does it feel to be the only Black speaker in the event? One might ask why Black founders are still receiving significantly less funding than the other demographic groups. I know startup entrepreneurship isn't easy for anybody, regardless of race or gender, except if your name is Elizabeth Holmes or Sam Bankman-Fried. But how do we at least level the playing field so that everybody can have the same opportunity? What are your thoughts on this?
Man, the U.S. is so complex in this regard because a lot of people who aren't probably racist by intention probably benefit that exist. And when you benefit from something, even if it's bad, you're not going to be very proactive most of the time about dismantling it. Like, it's just a hard thing to ask someone to do when no one is looking.
Yeah.
And so what happens when no one is looking, the status quo does this thing. And so let's just say this data is true. I haven't seen it, but let's just say it is accurate.
I'll share the notes.
So you would say, if this data is accurate, we can see the results. The results are, this thing is not even. Now, we could make a number that we would say is fair. Let's say 8% would be more accurate. I don't know what the perfect percentage is. That what makes this other thing part hard. Because should it be 50%? Should it be the same percentage as the demographics? Should it be the same percentage of the demographics of people seeking funding? I don't know what the perfect number is, but they just say the number is better than what the current number is.
Yeah.
And then you ask, well, how do we get to the current situation? Right? This is whatever we are right now in reality is not theoretical. It is factual. So you say, well, how do we get to where we are? And you could ask all the people involved in this, founders, the LPs who give VCs money, the VCs who dole it out, the people who are doing due diligence. These are all the actors that are involved. And you would ask them, did you do this on purpose? My guess would be the majority would say they did not do this on purpose. Mm-hmm. Right? That would probably be the thing. And so one would assume we're just riding the status quo. And in this country, the status quo has been architected in a way where if you do nothing, you're probably going to end up with results you don't like. Because there are already counter forces in place structurally that lead to these kind of results. So I am probably saying that I would lean on the side that it's not intentional, but that's also kind of the fault of it all. Because we know if you do nothing, it's predictable where you're going to end up with. If someone told you, if we did no other changes and we just allowed it to be, we'll probably end up with the same numbers again.
Yeah.
So now I think the real question becomes is what should change? So some of the things that I think are changing, at least from my point of view, is the number of people who look like me who have money now is probably bigger than it has ever been in the history of the United States. People like Serena Williams have a lot of cash, and she does venture capitalist. LeBron James also does venture capital. So the LPs are starting to change a little bit too. And these people are getting in, and maybe they are also looking to diversify their portfolio. They know the value of all perspectives because they come from a different perspective. So I think as the LPs start to change, maybe we went from 0.8% to the 1.2 we have now. That may represent progress, but maybe not enough progress.
True.
And now that people like me, I've been in the startup world for a while now. I know how LPs work. I've cashed in on equity private equity sells. I know how the lingo goes. I probably sit on at least 10 to 15 cap tables myself. I understand the difference between being employee number one, what the founders get, what the LPs get. There's a spectrum there. And I guess as we start to understand these differences in knowledge, also having data like this helps highlight the problem. So now we can go from ignoring the problem and just letting whatever else happen to saying this data is real. You can challenge the data, but now it's time to have that discussion. And so now I think there's a lot for all the actors to do. If you are a founder, and this is the conversation I have with my community, I'll say things like, listen, what is venture capital good for? Sometimes you have a really good business idea that can just work as a bootstrapped business, meaning you go get customers, you make more profit, and you build out the team to match the profit that comes in. I would probably say the majority of the businesses in the world work this way. And you probably can't make great use of capital. So if someone gave you $10 million, it doesn't mean that business is going to be on the path for accelerated growth. So I think knowing that VCs, venture capital is a new thing. It's not like something that has been around, I think, for hundreds and hundreds of years. This idea that VCs would take this amount of risk, spread capital in the way that they do, and hoping that a single-digit % of them actually make it, this is a new form of investing. Some say was only enabled by 0% interest rates. So I think we're starting to do the analysis of this. But now, though, there's a lot of business owners. So I come from a world, when I had that computer shop, bootstrap was the only method I could even imagine being a thing. I didn't have a strategy for what it would be like to open 10 stores across the state of Georgia. I only thought about what it would take to just run this one store with limited inventory that I can actually sell. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of business. So that's number one. There's nothing wrong with a business that actually makes money.
For sure.
And then the part around what type of businesses and ideas attract venture capital. For me, and I can't speak for the whole Black community, but for me, that's something that I've only learned probably in the last 8 years of a 25-year career. You know, to have something worth a venture capital taking that level of risk, they want a huge outside return. And in some cases, only ideas that will work due to venture capital being injected, like Uber, cannot work without venture capital, right? They kind of skirted the law and use, I'm pretty sure, a fair amount of that funding to deal with legal issues. You can't try to bootstrap that kind of company because I think you'll be crushed by the fact that the regulators will catch up to you faster than you can expand.
You bet.
And so I think now that these other groups are starting to learn what attracts venture dollars, what type of business scenario can only exist in the world of venture capital. So you'll get more of those. And I think as the LPs also grow in their diversification, seeing other success stories, they'll say, hey, I'm not going to be afraid of founders that look like that. Maybe they can start to look at some successes and say, oh, wow, this guy's really great, or she's really great in her venture. I'm going to invest in people that look like her. So maybe the numbers get better. But look, governments play a role in this. One good argument I heard on this was some of these funds are literally funds that come from pensions, the workers in the state. Not necessarily the state of California, but pick any state. And imagine that pool of money being drawn from a group that is way more diverse than those numbers. Ideally, the fund of people getting these opportunities for the capital should also be as diverse as the LPs that it's composed of. And I think now that people are seeing this numbers, seeing the transparency, you might start to ask questions like, hey, hold on. I may know some founders from different backgrounds that are not getting any of the funding, but they are qualified, yet you have no problem pulling from a diverse set of LPs. Then we need to make sure that we're trying to do a good job of giving these opportunities to everyone versus people from a very limited circle. So that's the way I think about it. And the role that I try to play is one of the education, the number of 101s, the LPs that I work with, being an example. I'm in the advisory side. I have no interest of being a founder myself, but I am still interested in collecting equity and being part of this thing we call venture capital as well. And so I think educating people on how it works, learning from each other, and just sharing all of that knowledge. I don't know if it's still up, but I did a whole Twitter space with my friend Joseph Jacks. He runs a VC called OSS Capital.
Oh,
He's
nice.
really focused on investing in open source companies. But we did a whole rundown on how he's actually one of the other co-founders of KubeCon.
Oh, nice.
And Joseph Jacks is now a venture capitalist, and he invests primarily in open core, open source startups. And he talks about how to start raising your first fund, how do you track the funding, you know, how does he think about how he invests, the criteria he used for what he thinks is going to be a successful company. And I think that kind of knowledge is going to be really helpful for people that look like me that are trying to get into a world like that.
Interesting. And I don't know if you know the founder of Calendly, Awatona Topi, and he was pretty much opinionated about this because he experienced this sort of imbalance back in 2013. He was using the funds from his 401k. Then the money started to dry, and I'm just quoting him because at some point he told some of the reporters from Inc. magazine, and he told them, I had a working product and customers using it, and everyone said no. Meanwhile, I watched all the people who fit the different profile get money thrown at them for shitty ideas. So this is what he said related to his experience. But, you know, kudos for him because turns out it worked out for him because he stretched every dollar he had. And from 2016, Calendly was able to turn profit with the paying subscribers, right? But you always think, like sometimes you go through the nets because you handle it yourself, but does it have to be like this for the future generation?
Yeah, I mean, and I think stories like that and experience like that is definitely what people should be listening to. You know, I think venture capital should be accessible to all those that qualify. I think people agree that it currently isn't. I've been offered on the other side of the equation, especially once my kind of name got pretty well known in the industry, I've had VCs just come to me with ideas and say, the funding is ready to go. When you're ready, and don't even have a product yet.
Yeah.
It's like, whenever you're ready to do something, we're ready to do something. And I did find that kind of strange, but that is how a lot of founders, you know, sometimes they're raising funds just on their name alone. Like,
yeah,
maybe,
like,
you know,
wow,
maybe
like
they're
Trump
known or they know someone. They're, you know, they have some insight into how to get that funding. But look, I'm really glad that this conversation is here. I think we know a lot more about this space than we ever did before. And the Calendly example is another good example that for those that are unsure of where they should be investing their money, now you have some really good examples of what another profile of a worthy founder looks like. And so look, if you're a VC, your job is to turn these investments into profitable companies and actually get a return.
Absolutely.
And so if you're going to cast a wide net, make sure you ain't catching the same fish.
True.